Hey there, and welcome. Sometimes the music we love has a history that's just completely unexpected. And that's exactly what we're diving into today, the incredible, surprising story of the brass band. So here's the big question we're going to tackle. How in the world did the sound of the battlefield, that super rigid, disciplined music of military marches, somehow become the sound of the jazz club? All that freedom, that improvisation, you might be surprised just how direct that line really is. All right, so let's get into it. Our story kicks off, of all places, on the battlefield. Yeah, we're talking way back in the early 1800s, right in the middle of the Napoleonic Wars. Picture it, a chaotic European battlefield. Music wasn't for entertainment, it was a tool, literally. You had hundreds of these military bands, and their whole job was to use those big, loud brass instruments to cut through all the noise. They were boosting morale, sure, but they were also barking out commands. This was music with a job to do, and a really serious one at that. So the wars finally wrap up in 1815, and something pretty wild happens. Over 20,000 military musicians get demobilized. Just sent home. Think about that. You've got this huge, highly skilled army of brass players, all with their instruments in hand, suddenly looking for something new to do. So you can really break this whole journey down into three big phases. We've just talked about the military origins. Next up, we're going to see what happened during the civilian transition. And then the grand finale, the absolutely explosive jazz transformation. Okay, so the wars are over. But these veterans, they didn't just pack up their horns and call it a day. No way. They took that music and brought it right into the heart of their communities. And in doing so, they started weaving it into a whole new social fabric. And I mean, these guys became the backbone of everyday life. They were forming colliery bands in mining towns, playing at village festivals. You'd hear them at church services. Heck, they were even the soundtrack for political rallies. The brass band basically became the sound of the people. And we're not talking a little popular, we're talking incredibly popular. Get this, by 1900, the brass band wasn't just one kind of band. It was the most popular kind of band in the entire country. This was it, the absolute peak of that polished, structured community sound. And if there's one name you need to know from this era, it's John Philip Sousa. They called him the March King for a reason. He was the son of an immigrant trombonist, and he just perfected the whole thing. He led the U.S. Marine Band, wrote these iconic marches that everybody knew. He basically defined the sound of the age. This was the pinnacle of that disciplined, every note on the page style of brass music. But here's where the story takes a turn. While Sousa is up there perfecting the march, something else is brewing. A revolution, really. And for that, we have to head down south, to the one-of-a-kind cultural melting pot that is New Orleans. So down on the streets of New Orleans, you had these incredible black musicians, and they were taking those exact same military marches that Sousa was making famous, and they were just tearing them apart and putting them back together in a whole new way. It was looser, it was improvised, it was what people started calling hot music. And this gets at a really fundamental shift in thinking. Music nerds call it the triumph of tonk. Now, tonk was actually kind of an insult. It's what the formally trained musicians called the guys who played by ear, the ones who didn't stick to the sheet music. But in New Orleans, that so-called rebellion was everything. It was the engine of innovation. So this whole play-by-ear approach led to two massive changes. First, you get collective improvisation. I mean, a band would just kick off a bass line and go for like 40 minutes straight. No sheet music anywhere. And second, and this is huge, they came up with the second line beat, a totally new rhythm that, believe me, changed everything. So what does that even mean? Well, it's all about syncopation. Fancy word, simple idea. You're just putting the accent on the offbeats, right where you don't expect it. So on the bass drum, instead of a straight beat, you get this. Da, 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 did it, da. You hear that? That little hiccup? That little playful skip in the rhythm? That feeling spread to all the other instruments, and it made the whole band swing. This was music that got into your bones. It made you want to move. You just couldn't fight it. I mean, look at this. It really lays out the whole transformation. The military band, all about written scores. The jazz band, thrived on improvisation. The military band's job, commands and morale. The jazz band's, expression and dance. And the big one, the rigid, straight marching beat, got replaced by that infectious, undeniable swing. And, this incredible transformation didn't just stay in New Orleans, it exploded. It literally laid the foundation for one of America's greatest art forms, and gave us some of the most legendary artists in history. So many of the OG jazz giants came right out of this brass band world. You're talking about people like James Reese Europe, who was blending that military precision with ragtime, Oscar Celestin, the leader of the legendary Tuxedo Brass Band, and, of course, the one and only King Oliver, and his most famous student, a guy named Louis Armstrong. So, next time you hear a modern jazz group playing, you hear that conversation between the musicians, that swinging rhythm, those incredible solos. Just remember where it came from. What you're hearing is a direct echo of this amazing journey. It's literally the sound of history, still evolving. So in the end, that's what this is all about. It's a story of transformation. Military discipline became collective freedom. The fixed, written score became living, breathing improvisation. And that stiff, old marching beat, well, it finally learned how to swing. From the battlefield to the bandstand, it's just an incredible journey that completely reshaped the sound of music. And it kind of makes you think, right? What other secret histories are hiding in your favorite songs?